caught up on that same presentation. Paige, you set up the stream already?
She's streaming.
Oh, perfect.
Where was I again? It was somewhere around here. That's that was where it was.
Yeah, like right down here. Where camera?
Make sure I'm tall enough too. Okay, that should be okay.
Oh, you have no arms. You can't write.
All right. We'll give it about, I don't know, 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start. Just giving more people time to come join if they need to.
Just imagine you signing to me down here.
This is all for you, Matt.
Whoa, this is amazing.
Don't you feel special?
Don't worry, I won't.
You thought I could draw.
I was drawing you well.
Yeah, I'm in pancake mode primarily because I'm still eating. What? Can you do it a little slower? So T A and pancakes. No, I'm eating Wendy. Depends. But you want to know what's okay? So, Sal. Sal. You ever dunked spicy chicken nuggets into a chocolate frosty?
All right. Well, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, Shaw. How do I make sure everybody's on the same presentation?
Make sure they can read freshman orientation for helping hands.
Everyone see freshman orientation here? Trying to figure out new presentation systems. Everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I will stop signing now. We have a interpreter here, Codapop. He is on your right screen. He will be interpreting for me. That way I probably will end up randomly throwing signs out there because that's who I am as a person. But we'll get on with it. Welcome to the first ever freshman orientation for Helping Hands. Okay, so why is it not changing?
It did change for me for a moment.
It did change mine for me.
Changed for me.
It's not changing for me.
Not for me.
It went back to the freshman orientation part.
Do me a favor a second. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm gonna stop it.
Technical difficulties, like I said, new system. We're trying to figure things out.
Gotta wait for these things to load. Give me a second. Okay.
Stop breaking things, Shaw.
Pull out the hammer. Hammer
Wait
fixes
for yours
everything.
to load.
No. We gotta do it like the Fonz.
And would you kindly press take control and start talk?
All right.
We
We good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yes. We have Coda on cam. We have me on cam.
Next.
All right. Did it change for you? Because it's still not changing for me.
Nope. Oh, there it goes.
What the heck is it doing?
I do not know.
Could it be caching?
No, this is the CDN problem we were running into last time.
It did flip through a couple of
It's
slides.
changing for me up here.
It's not
I'm
even
gonna rejoin
doing
because maybe I'm the
anything for
problem.
me. Think that'll help?
Oh my god, Shade, you killed him! Oh, Coda is now the king!
There's 2 Codas. Coda supremacy!
There can only be one.
This is getting out of hand. Now there's 2 of them.
Don't you mean 3?
There's 3 of them?
Yeah, because one of
Oh shit, there's one up there. Coda! Coda! Look in between the crack!
Let me try a thing. This is weird. I change it to example less in a second. Because I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if that one works. Got it?
This is why he builds the worlds, and I try not to break them. But somehow, I'm still end up breaking them.
I can't remember what the programming setting thing is about users.
You mean the world, if you build a smarter program, the world will build dumber users?
Yeah, something like that.
That's me. I'm the dumber user.
No. Why is that slide 3?
I don't know. And see, now I see my second slide, but I'm also not.
Yeah, but it
controlling.
says slide 3. Okay, take control. Here you go. It seems to be doing its thing.
Okay. All right.
Talk. Good.
Okay. Everybody see who is Shade Axis. So this is who I am. I am an actual IRL certified interpreter. I've been working in interpreting for 6 years in a variety of settings. I've been signing for 10 years now. I actually have 2 different degrees. I have one that I learned English, Spanish, and French. I got a modern language degree in that. And then I also got an ASL degree. I found out that it was actually an entirely separate degree. So I had to go back and get a separate one. I just couldn't add it on to my original degree. But anyway, I have 2 different degrees in languages, linguistics, that kind of thing. And I'm here to talk to you about Helping Hands and what our community is, what we do, who we are, and some basics about deafness, deaf people in VR, that kind of thing. All right, so it is still changing. Okay, cool. So here's a quick little rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. First thing we're going to do is we're going to have some definition of terms. That way you guys know what kind of things we're going to talk about. promise it's not like an ASL vocabulary lesson. I'm not just going to throw a bunch of words at you. We're actually going to explain what they are and how they're applicable. We're going to talk about sign language itself, talk about the difference between ASL, PSE, and C for a lot of people who've heard about that and want to know more. We're also going to talk about mutism. It's a very hot topic in our community, so we're going to have a little bit about that. We're going to talk about where and how to learn sign from our community members, and we're going to also talk about our Discord and its rules and our roles that we have in it and what each role means and how it operates. All right, here's our vocabulary list. Very first one, Spectrum, not the cable company, thank God. Spectrum, we're going to talk about multiple things today, but understand this really isn't a binary world. It's not this or that. Almost everything we talk about is going to fall along some sort of line, some sort of kind of this, kind of that. There's no really clear-cut lines in a lot of things we're going to talk about. All right. First thing we're going to talk about is the difference between deaf with a capital D and deaf with a small d. Whenever you have a deaf with a small d, that is normally the medical condition. That is talking about somebody who just can't hear, period. It's from a medical standpoint. It just means the inability to hear. If you have a capital D, that's a completely different identity. That is a state of mind, that is a culture, that is a language, that is a shared experience between people who have had some form of deafness in their life, who have experienced hardships, who have experienced a strong community because of those shared hardships, because of those bonds. They have their own cultural identity, which we will talk about here pretty soon. And again, it's a spectrum. Some people say that they are very strongly deaf in the culture. Some people are medically deaf, and they're like, no, not really involved with the actual capital D deaf culture. Going with the deaf culture, there's also deaf and hard of hearing. And again, this is a spectrum. It is a line. There are some people who are deaf, who are profoundly deaf, cannot hear anything, have strong deaf culture, truly see the world from a deaf point of view. And there are some people who still feel they are deaf, but they are much more on the hearing side of things. They're much more not involved with the deaf culture part, and most of them identify as hard of hearing. However, again, this is not a clear-cut line. There are so many people who have this like gray area in between. Some people say that, hard of hearing just means I can put my hearing aids on and I can kind of hear and can kind of talk, but they still feel themselves are culturally and I have the deaf identity. It's what each individual deaf person wants to identify themselves as. It's their decision to make. The small d deaf, that is a thing that a doctor can say. They can say, yes, you are medically deaf. You have a certain hearing loss that they have measured and can label you as that. The big D deaf versus hard of hearing, that is a cultural thing that person themselves decides. And with that, we've got culture, which everybody has their own different sort of culture. Everybody has something that they're involved in. They have their own groups that have their own norms, their own beliefs, their own shared experiences. All of that is contained within culture. We have a strong bit of deaf culture in our community in Helping Hands. We also have our own helping hands culture because we have enough of a mix of international students. We have enough people who are hearing and trying to learn. We have people who barely know sign, but they're super invested in the VR aspect of it and they just love hanging out with us and they're trying to learn sign. We have our own little culture here as well. The point is that culture is a shared belief system, a shared group of values that a group has. A big part of deaf culture, however, is sign language. It is a visual language instead of an auditory language that lets them communicate the way that most hearing people can't. A lot of hearing people can't have conversations through windows, can't have conversations from across the room without yelling and straining their voice. A lot of hearing people can't have conversations underwater while they're scuba diving. You can't have conversations while trying to be quiet and just have a little quick conversation with your friend. Sign language is absolutely fantastic. It's part of deaf culture. It's part of their culture. They really are the ones who have the definitive say on it. They're the ones who are, I don't want to use the term gatekeepers because that's a very negative thing, but this is part of their culture. And as hearing people like me who have learned ASL, who have been an interpreter for years, who've been working with deaf people, I still have to constantly respect them as it's their language, not mine. I use it every single day. I use it for at least 8 hours every single day. It is still their language, not mine. It's part of their culture and something that deaf people value and cherish as part of their culture. All right. And I work 8 hours a day being an interpreter. So my job in whatever setting I'm in, whether it be education, medical, job trainings, anything like that, whenever I'm interpreting, I'm just there to provide communication because the hearing person, the doctor, the employer, the teacher, whatever, they can't communicate with their deaf client, whoever that is. They do not have the ability to sign. They do not have the ability to understand a deaf person's sign language. So they bring in an interpreter who comes in and is able to provide that communication. As an interpreter, I am not in the room, really. I'm not there to provide any sort of input, any sort of opinions, any sort of editing of the message. I am a telephone wire. What this person says, I tell this person what they said. That's it. There is a bit of cultural mediation that happens in there as well, but that's more based on your own abilities and being able to effectively interpret. But again, your opinions do not go in there. As an interpreter, the deaf community has accepted me and let me work with them, let me help them bridge the gap between hearing and deaf communities and try and just provide communication. That is my job. That is what I do. That is what I love. We also have other hearing people who are very well respected in the deaf community. CODAs, just like our current interpreter right now, CODA Pop. CODA, CODA, stands for Child of Deaf Adult. They are children. Typically, they have 1 or 2 deaf parents. They have grown up using sign language, having a deaf cultural basis in their home, in their life. They are hearing. That's the point of being a CODA. If you are deaf or hard of hearing and have hard of hearing parents, deaf parents, you're just deaf or hard of hearing. But CODA has a special place because they're hearing, but they are also mentally, culturally, identically they have the deaf identity in them, even though they are hearing. They're amazingly respected and cherished in any of the deaf communities. All right, so we're going to address a few questions that keep popping up. One of the most common ones we get is, oh, sign language is universal, right? No, not at all. Hopefully, being part of Helping Hands, you will have realized by now that we offer ASL, LSF, DGS, KSL, all sorts of different sign languages. But many people think that sign language is universal. They think that it's one language that you can use anywhere. It's not. These languages are also tied to the identity of where they come from. They are part of, like, American Sign Language uses American phrases, uses American cultural impactful events that have shaped the language. LSF, which French Sign Language, that's actually where American Sign Language kind of came from. There's a whole deaf lesson we can go into about that. But while they're similar, they have so many different things. Language evolves over time, just like any language at all will. But sign language, like, we developed LSF over in France, ASL over here in America, and they both have diverged so far that they are completely separate languages. their own thing. A lot of people still think, oh, you know sign language means you can go to Portugal and you'll be able to talk to deaf people over there. No, not at all. Sign language is not universal. All right. Another question that we constantly get is what is PSE? Because we talk about ASL, PSE, C, those kind of things. So American Sign Language is a actual language by all definitions of linguistics. It is a full language. It has grammar structure. It has rules. It has defining characteristics that identify it as its own language. C, signed exact English over here, is what is known as a manual coding system. It's where you take spoken English and you take each part of it and you have some sort of sign for it. It has every single syllable, well, not syllable, but every single part of the word is signed. If I'm saying going to the store, I sign both go and ing. There is no defining characteristics of C. There are no linguistic features that identify it as its own language. It is simply a manual way, a signed way to do English. English already has its own defining characteristics and its own grammar structure. ASL, on this side of the spectrum, has its own different grammar structure, defining characteristics, all that. PSE is short for Pigeon Signed English. Some people also call it contact sign. It is a mix. It's basically the in-between. If you, as a hearing person who've grown up your entire life speaking English, try and start learning ASL, you're not going to be able to grasp all the complex language, all the special non-manual markers, all the complex grammatical things right off the bat. It's impossible for a new student to do that. So almost every new student starts off here on this side of the spectrum. You start learning by just signing the way you would speak in English. You have to learn the ASL grammar structure. And the more you learn, the more you practice, the more you develop your ASL skills and learning that ASL grammar and those linguistic features, the further along the spectrum that you're going to get. Once you get all the way over here, you've officially become an ASL user and you can actually sign in ASL grammar. I will tell you that even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I still feel like I fall like right here. I am not culturally deaf. I did not grow up signing. I still have an English brain. I still think in English. So even whenever I'm trying my absolute best to be as ASL as I possibly can, English is going to sneak in there because that's how my brain works. But my goal is here. My goal is to be as ASL as possible for those who need it. As an interpreter, if I meet a deaf client who their linguistic style is over here, I'm going to try and match them. If I meet a deaf person whose linguistic style is over here, I'm going to try and match them. That is my job. But whenever I'm trying to learn another language just for the sake of learning another language, this is my goal. If you're going to try and learn Spanish, you don't want to learn Spanish but speak every third word in English. That's not learning Spanish. You have not mastered Spanish if you get stuck somewhere in here and call it quits. You can communicate, you can get by in a decent conversation, but if your goal is to actually learn the language, you need to be shooting for actually learning the language. So if you hear people talking about, oh, signing PSE, learning PSE, just understand it's kind of like a road to get to ASL. It's not its own language. It is a stepping stone to get to ASL. All right, another question we constantly get asked. This is where all the mutes hang out, right? So we're going to talk about what mute actually means. The term mute by itself means an either physical, psychological, emotional, mental, or some sort of inability to speak. It is an actual medical diagnosed condition. It is something only a doctor can say that you actually have or actually are. There are mutes in our community. There actually are for real mutes. And out of respect to them, that is one of the things we're trying to clarify, because we want to make sure that we understand mute means an actual medical condition. It's part, just like we have deaf people. If you're a hearing person and you say you're deaf, you are abusing their culture. You are trying to take part of their culture away. It is their culture. It's the same thing with mutes. This is part of their culture. This is who they are. However, we're in VR. Tons of people don't want to use their voice in VR. They don't want to use their mics in VR. And they come in and say, oh yeah, I'm a mute. We're trying to change that. We don't want to discredit that at all. A lot of people have anxiety, generalized anxiety. A lot of people just don't want to use their voice. A lot of people don't want to talk in VR. I fully understand. Quite often whenever I'm in VR, I don't turn on my mic because I just find it easier to sign. If you decide you want to be an in-game mute, it's perfectly fine. We just would ask that you are using the correct terminology. You are an in-game mute, you are a VRC mute. There's no real defined correct label for it at this point. Don't know if there ever will be one, but we just want to be respectful to the people who actually are mute and actually have some sort of condition that prevents them from speaking, and make sure that we are not taking advantage of their situation and saying, oh, we're the same thing. It's part of their culture. We need to leave it to them. All right. Also, we get requests from other communities as well. We get people who are just hanging out in public worlds, and they go, so what happens if we see somebody signing? And of course, they'll say, what happens if we see a mute? Whatever. If you see somebody signing, what do? You go say hi. Try and talk to them. If you can't, you can learn. How do you learn? Obviously, we've got helping hands. Shaw, why is it not working again?
I don't know, but I noticed it bumped forward a second. Could you go back a couple slides and see if it syncs?
All right, I've got that slide.
Yeah, press on play video if it doesn't want to jump forward. It might just be that time code thing.
It's just stopped on this slide.
Mm-hmm. Can you go forward?
Again, technical difficulties.
Yay.
Always fun.
Our PowerPoint.
We'll go forward another one.
Broken.
Hit it with a hammer.
It's not even for me. It's not even going forward at all on anything.
It's weird. It hiccuped. I'm gonna take control a second.
Go ahead.
I got mutism in-game mute.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do if I see people signing?
Yeah.
Learn more sign. Good chunk.
Yeah, and for me, it's stuck on this one, the how do I learn more sign, and it won't go on to the next one.
That is a thing. Happened. Oh, it sees it as
And it was
slide
going
0
well.
of 2 again. 1 second. Oh, it lost the index for the lesson.
Okay. How do you fix that? Or what do we do about that?
I'm reloading the talk.
All right. Are you ready for me to take control again?
It doesn't have more slides after this. That's it.
Well, it does. So, all right. Well, Can you at least put up
And I can't.
something? I know basically what the rest of it is. It's not much.
Yeah.
We're pretty close to the end anyway.
Go ahead and take control. Start talking. It should pop it right back up there. All
right.
Almost.
Good enough. Like I said, we were pretty close to the end. I can go through the rest from memory. Unfortunately, we won't have visual aids, but all right. So, how do you learn more sign? Obviously, if you are part of Helping Hands right now, you already know that we offer different classes. We have people who teach ASL, LSF, KSL, DGS, BSL, all sorts of different sign languages. You can pick one that you're interested in. Get the role for it in Discord. You'll get pinged whenever we have classes. We have our teachers who teach these classes right now. I will let you know that right now we are trying to revamp what we do for classes, but as they are right now, you go into a classroom, you have a lesson with your teacher who most of the time teaches a vocabulary lesson. We have some teachers who do like directly from a board that we have that's already a preloaded vocabulary list. We have some people who make their own vocabulary list. We have some teachers who make their own lesson completely just from scratch. Just look on the Discord, try and find out which classes you're interested in, see what times you're available, and try and go. It's basically as much as I can tell you. It's up to you. It's your decision on what you want to learn, how much you want to learn. We will say there are qualifications for all our teachers. They are fully fluent and culturally competent in the sign language that they teach. They are volunteers, however. They are not, with the exception of one, none of them are actually IRL teachers. They are not actually accredited by any sort of board, anything like that. They're just volunteers here wanting to spread sign language in the VR community and let more people have access to this amazing community of deaf people that we have here. Real quick, talking about the Discord, we have different roles in the Discord. If you take a look, we have just your normal member. Above that, we have VRC Signer. It's the light green role. Those are for people who consistently come to classes and have learned our version of VR sign language as best they can. They are labeled as students. They have a decent amount of VR, ASL, BSL, whatever experience. Above that, we have the light purple, light pink color. That is our IRL student role. That is for people who are actually IRL involved in some sort of sign language class, whether it be high school, college, whatever. If you are involved in a IRL sign language class, you can send a picture of your schedule to one of our mods and we can get you that role. You have a bit more ability to answer questions and more credibility because you have actual real life experience. Regardless of what we try and do here, this is still VR. We are limited on what we can do and how we can sign. We can't do facial expressions the way you can in real life. We can't get all the perfect hand shapes we want to as we would in real life. So people who are in the IRL classes have actually seen that and been exposed to it. And while they aren't yet fluent, they aren't yet at that level, they at least have seen it in real life and know what it should look like, hopefully. Above that, we have our actual fluent role. That is the dark purple. Those are people who are actually fluent in their whatever sign language. On the Discord, you can click on somebody's name if they have it, and it'll say what specifically sign language they are fluent in. Those are people that you can ask sign language questions to, and they should definitely be able to tell you the answer as long as you're asking them about the language they know. Don't be talking to Sheezy about ASL, right? I'm joking. I love you, Sheezy. So you can find out, hey, I want to learn more. I'm learning at BSL right now. I need to learn more. I have a question. You can find somebody who's fluent, see if they have the BSL, and ask them, say, hey, can you help me out with this problem? Above that, we have our organizers and our mods. Most of our organizers host some sort of class, do some sort of thing. We have our movie nights, we have actual classes, we have game nights, we have no voice zone, which is just an opportunity for you to come and socialize, get your practice your signing skills. Trying to remember because again, I don't have the visual cues. I don't know what happened to the PowerPoint. Yes. Okay. One other thing that we do want to cover, which is a very sticky subject with our community and constantly pops up as an issue with us, is who is allowed to teach? Who is allowed to actually teach students and provide sign language instruction? So we have our organizers. They have been deemed as qualified, as ability to teach. They can host classes. They can teach large group classes in whatever sign language they specifically are teaching that they are accredited to do or qualified to do. Many of our fluent members are not organizers, so they aren't having full-blown classes, but they are fluent. They are qualified to give input on sign language. If you need help from them, or if they want to, teach you, hey, here's this really cool sign, you can totally trust them in knowing that that sign's correct. They are fluent. They know what they're talking about. A lot of times we have a lot of issues with students trying to teach each other, or students trying to teach classes. That is one of our biggest issues we have, because quite often we find out that people are doing it wrong. It's a sticky subject. It's something that we're trying to put a lid on, but also we realize that some people are hearing, oh, students can't teach, and then going and tattling on other people. And we're like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Whenever we say teach, we are talking about actually trying to teach sign language, trying to teach people who know nothing, who are trying to learn and trying to actively act as an authority figure and say, yes, I know it. I'm going to teach you all the things I know. There's also this other thing called collaborative learning. That is perfectly acceptable. That is whenever you have two students who are both basically roughly on the same level, and one of them goes, oh my gosh, I forgot the sign for pizza. I'm just throwing out a random word. They forgot the sign for pizza. And the other one's like, oh yeah, I remember, it's this. That's not teaching. That's working together. That is helping each other. That's perfectly fine. If you see people in a public world doing that, in the experimental ASL world doing that, it's perfectly acceptable. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to grow this community. We want this community to grow and expand. We want as much sign language out there as possible. We want to have as little barriers for our deaf members as possible. VR has tons of events like VRCon, different, like all sorts of communities, and we have started being able to get interpreters into those events to provide access for our deaf members who want to go. But it's still not there yet. We want to keep going. So more people who know about sign language, more people who find out about our community, the more that we can get the word out and get accessibility out there. So if I don't want to directly speak to anybody at all, I don't want to yell at anybody, but if you are a person who's been teaching your friends sign language, please leave that up to the professionals. If you want to help your friend learn sign language by saying, hey, come on over here, we're going to look at the board together and we're going to work together, do that. That's perfectly wonderful. That is amazingly helpful. But actually teaching the sign language, leave that to people who actually are fluent and can do it correctly and not have common mistakes happen. There are so many people that we see who are still students and they sign things wrong. And it's not that they're wrong and it's not that they're bad. It's that they haven't learned correctly yet, or they tried to learn it off of a board and they got their hand slightly wrong and it means something completely different. Just leave the teaching to those who are actually teachers and who actually can provide quality education. And again, I'm sorry to have that as such kind of like a sour, somber note, but that is a big sticking point with our community and a big issue that we're having that we're trying to address, that we want to be able to grow from and move on from and have this community be the amazing thing that we know it is. I'm pretty sure that was the last slide. Again, I don't have the thing here, but the very last slide is Q&A. So if anybody has any sort of question, I'm open to answer as much as I can. Hopefully I didn't skip over anything, and hopefully you won't ask me a question. I'll immediately go, oh yeah, that was the slide I was missing. But anybody has a question, now is the chance. If you'd like to put on your mic, if you'd like to please come up here kind of close in front of the podium so we can get you one at a time, that would be the time. The TTS? Yeah, what's the deaf community from? Yeah, what's the deaf community's opinion on TTS? Are we talking about like IRL, or are we talking about the like the mods that are currently? Okay, so in there we have people who have this text to speech thing that they've put on their avatars. That is just a thing that's on their avatars, and they're able to hold up something, and all of a sudden, whatever they say into their microphone also appears in front of them. That's perfectly fine. That is wonderful. That provides accommodations. That provides communication. I do know, however, there is a mod that has just recently been released that provides closed captions on people who are speaking. If you want to find out more about that, you are more than welcome to do that on your own time, but as helping hands, because it technically does violate the terms of service using a mod, we cannot endorse it, and we cannot really talk much about it. If you guys want to find out more about it and research it on your own, you're more than welcome to. Other questions? Shaw, come up here. Okay, let me make sure I got your question correctly. About talking about hearing people who are talking to deaf and hard of hearing people who only know a little tiny bit of sign and don't really like, they sign and then look away and then not get the full conversation. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So whenever you are interacting with a deaf or hard of hearing person, most of the time, I mean, there's obviously, again, this is a spectrum. There are some people who can, some people can't, but most of the time, people who are deaf and use sign language can't hear you or can't understand spoken language. If you try and talk to them and you look away from them, all of a sudden you've broken that communication. You've broken that line of communication between them. Whenever you see a deaf person and you want to talk to them, it's very integral to the communication. It's a feature of sign language is maintaining eye contact. And of course, with VR, with eye tracking, it's not going to be perfect eye contact, but you still need to be looking at the person. That shows that you're actively engaged. You are actually involved in the conversation and you don't miss anything. Oh, there was a slide that I didn't miss about that. There was a quick little slide about how to get a deaf person's attention, how to communicate with a deaf person. In IRL, if a deaf person isn't looking at you, you say, hey, behind their back, they're probably not going to be able to hear you. The way to get their attention when they're not looking at you most of the time is to tap them on the shoulder. That's just a polite, hey, I'm here, and they'll look, then you can start your conversation. In VR, with the exception of people who have haptic vests, a tap on the shoulder isn't going to do anything. Nobody's going to feel that. So most of the time you would need to get your hand or your body or something into their field of view, not like directly in front of them. Don't get up in their face, but get somewhat close to them and wave your hand. Just try and like, hey, I'm trying to get your attention. That's all you need to do. And as soon as they finally notice, they'll be like, okay, hey, what's up? What are we talking about? Or they'll tell you, hold on, let me finish my conversation. But by getting in their field of view and giving some sort of wave that indicates to them, hey, I'm trying to talk to you. I have something to say. Yeah, that's basically, because again, in VR, you can't really, in IRL, you can try and like flicker the lights. If you're in a room with somebody and a deaf person is looking and they're on the other side of the room, you can go over to the light switch and toggle it really quick, and the deaf person will go, oh, what? Oh, hey, somebody's trying to get my attention. If you are on like wood floors, you can stomp on the floor and those vibrations will travel and they can feel it and go, oh, look, somebody's trying to get my attention. It's just ways of getting around the same thing hearing people do. They yell at their friends. They're like, hey. And with a deaf person, that doesn't work. You have to accommodate. You have to come up with a different way of doing it. In VR, 9 times out of 10, it's getting somewhere in their field of view and waving. That's kind of what we have to deal with here in VR. But yeah, if you see a deaf person, you want to have a conversation with them, just make sure they're looking at you first, because if you are just talking or signing and they're not even looking, they're missing everything you're saying. All right. Other questions? Yes, Shah. Oh. Yes. Do you need a pen? Can you be fluent if you cannot make facial expressions? Is that your question? Okay. So facial expressions are a very big part of sign language. In VR, we are limited with that. We do not get all the facial expressions, all the little tiny subtle hints of the language. IRL, you really need that. If there's some sort of like medical condition that makes it where your face doesn't do what it needs to do, you can't do the eyebrow things, there are ways to get around that. But really, the fluency doesn't necessarily have to do with just facial expressions. It has to do with the competency, with the language, with the culture, with the ability to sign on the same level as somebody who grew up signing their entire life. So I would say if you are fully capable without like having any sort of medical issue that prevents you from making facial expressions, if you don't make the facial expressions, you're missing a big chunk of the language, and that's not going to lead to fluency. You're autistic, you've got like something that makes it where you're not able to do all the facial expressions, that kind of thing. Well, then, yeah, in IRL, if there's something that's preventing that, then yeah, there's a way to achieve fluency. It's going to take a while, and you're going to have to figure out a different way around it, but you can get to that level. It's just going to require a lot of time and a lot of practice. All right. Any other questions? Again, Shaw. Which world has the videos for showing sign? Okay. So, again, thank you. You know my presentation better than I do. Yeah, there was another slide that again I missed. I thought we were at the end. Apparently, I was not as close to the end as I thought I was. So there are a couple different worlds. Again, if you're in Helping Hands, you've probably seen it at least. The experimental ASL world from Bob64. He is one of our creators in our community. We have it's like a skybox room. But there is a board that has different categories and just has an entire list of vocabulary words that is currently being edited and currently being reviewed by Fluent members to try and determine whether if it's correct or not. But whenever you click on one of these words, there is both a video that is going to pop up, and there is also a shader motion model that is going to sign that word for you. So you can previously you could only see a video, and we'd get a lot of people who would have some sort of mistake on signing it from learning from that video because it was a 2D representation of a 3D sign. They weren't able to get the movement correct, or they would have their hands slightly wrong or something like that. With adding in the shader motion avatar, you're actually able to like look around and say, oh, look at it from this angle, look at it from this angle, see how to do it correctly. That is one of our best worlds for learning sign right now, just learning random vocabulary. Again, it's currently under review, so if you go and look at those lists, anything that is green has been fully approved. Anything that is yellow is still not yet to be approved. Could be right, could be wrong, we don't know. Anything that's red is not approved. It has something wrong with it that we have decided to redo it and make the video again somehow. It could be for a multitude of reasons. So if you look at that sign and say, I'm pretty sure I've used that before, I've seen that before, very well might, but the committee that is reviewing it might say, oh, it has like the movement is slightly weird or something that we're going to try and fix. But if it's green, you can trust that as something that the committee who are reviewing those signs, who are composed of Fluent members, has deemed as appropriate, as deemed as accurate. So if you go to Experimental AS World, great place to learn. We also have Mr. Dummy Sign and Fun. He, I'm pretty sure, also has the video list, but he doesn't have the shader motion avatar. But his world also has a deaf museum, so you can learn all sorts of stuff about deaf history, deaf culture. It's also got like different random interesting rooms to go to. We have obviously this world here, the Helping Hands Learning Center. We have Helping Hands Headquarters, which we have two versions of right now because the old one is no longer Quest compatible. So we have a second one that is Quest compatible, and it's kind of in lieu of the first one. I'm not fully in the know on that one about whether one is going to eventually take over the other one or if they're going to be combined, or I don't know. But Helping Hands Headquarters is another. Let me real quick double check. Let me pull up my worlds list because I have a playlist for this specifically. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Yep. Mr. Dummy does have other worlds, but they do have sign language involved somewhere, but they're not really a specific learning place. We do have two school worlds that are meant to actually look like a school that certain teachers like to teach in those worlds. We have Mr. Dummy's school, and then we have our Helping Hands school by GT4V, G4TV. I can't ever remember the correct order of his name. But those are two school worlds that a lot of people will actually host their lessons in. But those worlds themselves don't have lesson boards and don't have a good way to learn on your own. It's more go there whenever you have a teacher. Other questions? Shah, are you going to remind me of another slide I missed? I'm sorry. Huh? Yes, thank you. Again, he knows my slides better than I do. All right. What are the rules for attending a class? If you end up going to one of these classes, the first and foremost one is these classes are invite only. So please do not share the link with your friends. as part of our social agreement of doing these things, we need everybody to have accepted our rules and our Discord, like our common rules that we have about behavior and code of conduct. So we only have those available for people who are actually in our Discord and have agreed to our rules. So it's an invite-only world. Please do not share it with any of your friends unless they're already in the community. And then even then, tell them, hey, click the link. If you have issues trying to join one of the worlds, obviously nobody here in the world right now had any issues joining, but anybody who's watching the stream or later watching this in the archive, if you have any sort of issues trying to join one of our classes, there's actually an FAQ that is pinned on the Discord that teach you how to step-by-step join the classes. Whenever you are in the class, it is mics off whenever the teacher is actually teaching. That's just to prevent feedback, prevent noise. Also, we have some people who, they don't mean to do anything by it, but they've got their mic on and their mom walks in, their roommate walks in, they open a bag of chips, something, and everybody in the classroom can hear it. And all of a sudden it's a distraction. Everybody's like, oh, what was that? So we ask you to keep your mics off. At the very end, whenever it turns into a Q&A, if there is one, or before or after class is actually happening, you can have your mics on if you want. It's fully your prerogative. For avatars, we need to make sure that whenever you are having class to either use a good or excellent optimized avatar. That's just to reduce lag, because these classes end up being pretty full, and we have a lot of people. Just common courtesy, try and reduce lag where you can, because hey, you may not have a problem with it, your computer may be able to be fine with it and not have any problems, but somebody else's might. So anything we can do to kind of lighten the load on somebody's computer to make it better for them. Whenever class is over, obviously we'll almost always do a picture with everybody, which we'll do here at the end of this. And yeah, go to class, have fun. Go to class with questions. Almost every single teacher at the end of their lesson is going to be like, anybody have any questions? And you can ask all you want. All right. Other questions? Also, real quick, I need a time check. Okay, cool. All right. Other questions? Yes. Hold on. I'm sorry. I need to get closer. I can't see you. So again, let me make sure I'm getting your question correct. People ask, hey, how do I join a class? You want to know what you're supposed to tell them. So if they're on quests? Okay. So it's one of those weird ones that I'm not the expert in. I know that we have. Apparently, we have a video explaining it in Discord because we have one of the people who is an expert who can tell me. I know that one of our teachers does separate lessons. He does one lesson with just PC and one lesson with just Quest. I don't have a Quest. I'm not an expert on it. I really don't know. So apparently, we have a video in Discord that explains it. So refer your friends to that. All right. Other questions? Ludwig.
Yes. Are most of your classes in the later American time zones? Do you have some that are also in the evenings for the Europeans? I saw a lot of the times were like 1 a.m. GMT and stuff. Do you have some classes that are like around evening? Or the GMT
So
people? 'Cause-
that's one of those ones we don't have the resources for as much as we'd want. We do whenever we get a new teacher, whenever we get somebody who joins our community not joins our community, but joins the organizers as hosting a class. One of the things we do is we try and figure out a time slot for them that works. We're trying to cover as much time as we possibly can and try and get as much opportunity for people to come. But it's really kind of dependent on what our teachers are able to do. A lot of our American teachers who are teaching ASL teach at like whatever time they're available. I know one of our teachers teaches at like, for me, it's like 3 p.m. On Fridays or something. One of them teaches at like noon on a certain day. But most of our lessons seem to be in the evening for me. Most of our BSL classes seem to be in the evening for them because it's early day for me. So it's just depending on what our teacher's availability is. Which language specifically are you trying to learn?
ASL.
ASL. Okay. I mean, it can be put to the organizer and say, hey, can we see, if somebody's more flexible, can we do a different time and try and get it more spread out? But again, it's just based on what our organizers do. Because again, we're all volunteers. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got. So we can try and accommodate everybody, but at the same time, it still may not happen. But again, your lessons that you go to, a lot of our lessons, a good chunk of them have been recorded and they're on the archive. So if you go on the Discord and go to class archives, you can go watch previous classes and go get that experience, get that lesson just by watching it on the YouTube. And then you're going to learn way more by going and trying it, by going and doing it. ASL is a use it or lose it skill. If you just go to class and that's all you do, you're not going to retain it as well. You are not going to become conversationally fluent at all. You're not going to be able to keep it up. Go find people who use ASL and go hang out with them. And we have so many people in the community who are night owls. We have early risers. We have people all over. So you will definitely be able to find some people to hang out with. So go get some exposure. That's the best part, of course. Any more last questions? I really need to kind of like wrap this up. Any more questions? All right. Well, just like every class we do in Helping Hands, we end with a photo. So if everybody will please go make their way over in front of the logo, we're going to take a big class photo.
As long as everybody's in by like the concrete and inwards, we should be fine. Yep, inwards of me, good. And inwards a little bit. You're at the very edge. Okay, good. And we're all set. I'm gonna get up on top because why not? I haven't done that before. Wow. That wasn't planned.
My leg.
Un momento, por favor. Turning out the avataro.
Okay. Bro, all I hear is ching 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 ching.
I know, right?
Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
There's like 50 pictures taken. Jesus.
It's maybe.
All right, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to the first ever freshman orientation here for Helping
Also, we were
Hands.
to get really close. The question
I'm
kept
so
going.
sorry about all the technological issues. Hopefully we'll get that fixed for next time. This is our first time doing it, so it's the first time experiencing this new system. Literally, our wonderful Shaw has just updated this world 20 minutes before we got in here with a new system, trying to make it where we had both a presenter and an interpreter on stage. So we thank him so much for all the work he's done. And again, hopefully it'll be better for next time. Thank you again for coming.
Sir, for showing a presentation. Thank you very much.
Happy to help.
So much.
Very cool.
Shade.
Bro, how are you gonna make a
Okay.
GIF if everyone's standing
Yes.
completely still for the picture, not moving?
Oh, just going to look at Shaw, but he.
It's like I heard somebody say my name, but I have no idea what direction.
Oh, it was
Hey,
me.
you-
It was
you-
me.
you-
Right
okay.
here.
Right, Tyler.
Hold on a
You're
second.
like, you're down here.
While you're busy giving all
Sorry,
the
I'm,
credit to,
I only go down
Yeah, I had
here
them with some
because I
class
don't
last
like being
night.
taller than
I'm so
here.
annoyed with that.
I don't like being taller